joining us right now is Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here, Jay.
Really appreciate it. Before I get into the funeral and before I get into what's going on with you back in your home country, I do want to ask, our country and the world really is watching these horrible fires in Los Angeles. Canada has a lot of experience with similar conflagrations. I know that you have been offering resources to the people of California and Los Angeles. What advice could you offer them?
Well, I think, unfortunately, over the past years, we've seen it get far worse, and we've seen wildfires increasingly encroaching on urban areas. And that's an interface fire where we're having to train up more local municipal firefighters to deal with wildfires in a way that we never had before. I've been back and forth texting with Governor Newsom. We've offered a tremendous amount of equipment that they're already accepting. There's expertise. There's things that we're having to do to deal with together as we, of course, respond to these fires, but also know that climate change means they're going to get steadily worse, and we have to keep stepping up on fighting climate change too.
But a lot of people out there might say, what does climate change have to do with this? Explain.
Well, when the summers get drier, when weather gets hotter, when weather patterns shift, communities that were built in a place that never saw fires are suddenly seeing fires much more frequently. There's a shift in everything that means even what we see now is going to just get worse and worse and worse over the coming decades if we're not serious about reducing our emissions and looking for ways to protect our future generations.
So you are here in Washington, D.C., even though you just stepped down as your party's leader and you will soon leave as Prime Minister. But why was it important for you to come here to Washington today to go to President Jimmy Carter's funeral?
Well, President Carter was a dear friend of my father's. They overlapped in their times of service. And Jimmy had been down at my father's funeral 25 years ago. He was always an inspiration to me in terms of compassionate, selfless leadership. And it was important for me, and I think it was important for the friendship between our countries, that the Prime Minister be there to represent.
President-elect Trump has been needling you a bit, calling you Governor Trudeau, talking about making Canada the 51st state. Did you have any interaction with him today?
No, not today. But that's not going to happen. Canadians are incredibly proud of being Canadian. One of the ways we define ourselves most easily is, well, we're not American. There is such a depth of pride that's not actually an issue. What I think is happening in this is President Trump, who's a very skillful negotiator, is getting people to be somewhat distracted by that conversation, to take away from the conversation around 25% tariffs on oil and gas and electricity and steel and aluminum and lumber and concrete, and everything the American consumers buy from Canada is suddenly going to get a lot more expensive if he moves forward on these tariffs. And that's something that I think we need to be focusing on a little bit more.
Did the re-election of Donald Trump and this more direct confrontation with Canada over this issue play any role at all in your decision to resign as leader of your party and Prime Minister?
No, on the contrary. What we were able to do during the first presidency of Mr. Trump's was work together in a very challenging situation to come out with a very strong win-win in Canada-U.S. relations with the renegotiation of the USMCA. It is a great deal for both of our countries. We've seen trade grow, we've seen opportunities grow, we've seen wealth grow in both of our countries for workers, for businesses. Working together concretely is something that we've been able to do in the past, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with him for the next 2 months while I'm still in office.
Let's talk about this potential 25% tariff from the United States on Canada. Economists say that will drive the Canadian economy into a recession, and the Canadian government is preparing retaliatory tariffs if these actually go through. Which do you think would be potentially the most effective against the United States? I don't want them, by the way, just as an American, I don't want these tariffs, but minerals, energy?
We don't want them either. We do not want to see tariffs on our side. We do not want to see tariffs on your side. It's bad for people who have for generations made things together and been successful together to actually start creating barriers between economies like ours. Like, we have so many resources in Canada, more than our market can support, so we export them to our closest friend who can rely on them. It is a win-win for us. We would definitely respond, as we did years ago when President Trump put tariffs on steel and aluminum. We responded by putting tariffs on Heinz ketchup, on playing cards, on bourbon, on Harley Davidsons, on things that would hurt American workers. But we don't want to do that because it drives up prices for Canadians and it harms our closest trading partner.
Is there nothing that Donald Trump is saying about trade status and relations right now where you think that he has a point? There's nothing you think that is unfair?
I mean, the conversation around tariffs started around border concerns. And what I spoke with him about in Mar-a-Lago was the fact that less than 1% of migrants into the United States, less than 1% of fentanyl into the United States comes from Canada. But there are absolutely more things we can do.
And you pledged $1 billion to enhance border security.
And we're strengthening. That's a clear win for President Trump that got us to do even more to reduce even further the minimal amounts coming in. On trade, there's more that we can do, but we should be focused on making sure that we're replacing Chinese lithium or Chinese germanium or Russian titanium into American productions by relying on your closest and friendliest trading partner in Canada. We can be a strong supplier of things that the U.S. needs to compete around the world because we can do it together. That's the argument that I'm making.
So the struggle that you were having domestically, your disapproval rating had to do with, as I understand it, discontent with your government because of high inflation and the economy, and also because of immigration policies. Those are also issues that the left-wing party in this country has faced a lot of disapproval of and just lost an election over. It seems like voters in both of these, liberal democracies are sending a message to left-wing parties, liberal parties. We don't like how you're doing the economy when it comes to inflation. We don't like how you're doing immigration.
There are a lot of feelings involved. I mean, if you look at the actual numbers, inflation in Canada was lower, came down quicker. Our economy bounced back faster after the pandemic than anyone else's, including the United States. We're projected to grow faster than the United States and all other G7 countries next year. Our economy is doing very well. But when someone's paying $8 for a head of lettuce, it doesn't matter that you're doing better than they are in Spain or somewhere else. There's a sense that, okay, something's got to give. And that's where incumbents are in trouble everywhere everywhere around the world, not just in our two countries. The issue, though, is that in a time of crisis, responsible politics is around focusing on things that actually make a real difference in people's lives. We delivered $10 a day childcare. We're delivering a dental care program that provides free dental care to people who don't have coverage. We're moving forward on putting a price on pollution that puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians, of middle-class Canadians. These are policies that are not short-term. They're policies that will have a deep impact in the well-being of Canadians and of our country for years to come. Now, you can take those policies, like a childcare policy, and say, oh, see, that's just about wokeness and about women's rights. Well, no, it's about getting more women into the workforce at a time where we need economic growth. That's what it is. But when you get I was going to say conflagration, but at least an intersection of both right-wing policy, right-wing attacks, and social media, you end up with a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and responsible governments have to stay focused on the policies that are making a difference, and that's what we've been doing.
I know you have to go. Before you go, I know you're not going to say who you want to succeed you, but whether it's Wayne Gretzky or Christina Friedland, what's your number one piece of advice for your successor when it comes to President Trump?
Understand that the win-win is what we need. Making sure that everyone understands that we do better when we work together, that yes, the American president has a capacity to hurt the Canadian economy. There's no question about that. But anything an American president does to hurt the Canadian economy will also hurt American consumers, American workers, and American growth. We do better when we work together to take on the world, whether it's China or Russia or anywhere else. When we work together, we can't be stopped. And that's the focus that we need to have. And that's certainly what I've continued to work on with President Trump.
Prime Minister Trudeau, thank you so much, and au revoir.
Pleasure to be here.